So just first and foremost, would you be able to just introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Rene Shreiner, and I am a teacher of theology and Bible and ethics. Yeah.
So like how did you get involved in religious education and teaching and all of that kind of
By accident, really. I was just interested in learning about religion, the Christian religion in particular,
thing?
because I had been having some very difficult life experiences, and felt like I really needed some answers to questions of why things were happening to me. And I was trying to figure out how I could make sense out of my experiences and make meaning out of my life. And I ended up going to a seminary, which is a graduate school that teaches religion. In the Christian tradition, they would teach about the Bible. So I ended up just taking a summer school course. I was 42 years old at the time. And I took a summer school course just thinking I would just take that one course. But I found it so helpful to me and so interesting that I wanted to stay. And I just kept taking courses and eventually got a master's and a doctorate. And where I was studying, they asked me to start teaching because I was obviously so interested in it, I guess. Mm-hmm.
So was teaching kind of, I know you had like you were obviously studying this, but was teaching kind of always in the back of your mind, or was that something like when you initially kind of went into this, did you know what you were gonna do with like all the classes and stuff you were taking and like the degrees you were getting? Or was teaching just kind of something that just like kind of came about?
That's such a good question because, again, since I was 42 when I started studying theology, I actually had two other careers before that. When I originally went to college, I studied computer science because I had to pay my own way through college. And I knew if I got a degree in computer science, I could get a job to pay off my loans for school. But what happened was once I got my degree and I started working, I really didn't like it very much. And I became very depressed. And really, again, asking those questions about what was the meaning of life and so on. Um, but what's interesting about the question you asked me of like, when did I know I was a teacher? Well, even with computer science, I ended up teaching people how to do certain programs in my job. So even though I was a computer science, like a computer programmer, I ended up getting assignments at work that said, could you teach this person how to do this kind of programming? Because I think I just naturally gravitated toward it. So even when I left that field and I got a degree in nutrition, and I became a dietitian and I did research in human nutrition, even then I ended up teaching the other students. I ended up tutoring in chemistry and so on, because the other students were struggling and they needed help. I eventually got a job at a university in Chicago, teaching undergraduates in human nutrition. So, no matter what field I was in, I would end up teaching. So I think that is just one of my natural propensities or talents is to be a teacher.
So I think it's pretty evident that you love your job and that you'd say it's a really nice job for your own self. But how would you think that others perceive your job?
How do others perceive my job?
Yeah.
Wow. It really depends. If you were to ask my students, I would think that my students would think like, oh my gosh, she's a professor because I teach at the college level now. I teach undergraduates, which are, usually students who are getting bachelor's degrees. And I think that they assume like, oh, she must make a lot of money or something like that. And that's so not true. If I wanted to make a lot of money, I should have stayed in computer science. Being a college professor, especially in a field like theology, does not pay a lot of money. So, so I think I would like to think that my students anyway perceive my job as very important, maybe, and thinking that I make money, but I really, it's not something that's going to make me rich, you know, so to speak. Maybe too, people would perceive my job as easy, I guess, you know, in that it's in an academic year, so there's certain times where I get like really long breaks. Like I'll get a long break over winter time and I'll get a long break in the summer. But it's also very difficult because when I am teaching, I put in a lot of hours. So I think people don't perceive just how many hours it takes to be a really good teacher and to really pay attention to each and every student individually.
That makes definitely a lot of sense. Kind of going off of that, because you teach kind of like a wide range of undergrad students, do you think that like it's more typical for people to see like the class or like the content as something that's more like traditional or kind of not necessarily like in the past, but more like I guess traditional kind of in that sense? Or is it like something people kind of go into as like an opportunity to like explore like ethics and like moral base and kind of all of that stuff? Like where do like student perspectives kind of lie on that scale going into the class?
I have a range of students because I teach Christian theology. One thing that I try to do is to find out if my students consider themselves Christian. And while the majority of them do, well, not even a majority, I would say, while if any of them feel like they have any religion, it tends to be Christian, but I'll also have some Islamic students in my class, I'll have some Buddhist students in my class, and so on. So when I'm teaching theology, even though the course is called Christian theology, I try to teach it as a religion, to say, like, this is what religion is, and theology is talk about God, and Christianity isn't the only religion that talks about God, right? Or some notion of the divine. And so I try to broaden their idea of what theology can be so that they can understand themselves better and that they can understand other people in the world better. So I think many of my students do not want to take this class. They do not want to take a theology class. The only reason I even have a job is because the university requires the students to take a class in theology as a way of making them good citizens of the world, you know? So yeah, I think they see it as very traditional and probably not very important to them. I'm hoping that in my class, I show them that it can be important to them if they choose to practice a religion, that it might be helpful in their life in some way.